thank you for coming to the film and staying for this video Q&A, and I hope to show more of my future films at the Hyde Park Picture House. Well, this was now years ago, but a friend of mine recommended this record to me, and he said it's by this gay disco auteur who used to ride the Staten Island ferry listening to tapes of his own music, and that he was part of the avant-garde scene of New York in the 1970s and 80s. And I mean, that really piqued my interest, so I went out and bought the music. Arthur died in obscurity, but in 2004 his music was experiencing a big resurgence. So I started listening to the music and I fell in love with it. One of the releases of his records was World of Echo, and it was a special edition with a DVD that showed video of Arthur performing. And I was just really captivated by that imagery, and I wanted to do something with the music creatively. Originally my idea was to make a kind of experimental film in the form of a record, where I'd make different chapters, almost like tracks, that dealt with all the kind of divergent and scattered different strands of Arthur's output. But as I started making the film and interviewing people, I realized that maybe a more kind of conventional feature documentary format might be more appropriate. Oftentimes when people were friends with or family or close with somebody who died under-recognized in their lifetime, they're quite excited to participate in a project that might enhance that person's legacy after their death. So it wasn't hard for me to collaborate with Arthur's family and friends and the people he made music with. I'd say the part that was a little harder was getting people who were involved in the world of disco and who had something meaningful and new to say about it. A lot of people from the disco era died, and a lot of people from the disco era are sick of talking about it. So to me that was the biggest challenge, is how do I authentically represent a kind of early period of underground disco? Well, you know, so much of Arthur's music that he made during his lifetime was unreleased, and a lot of what he did is kind of make sketches and fragments of music that was never completed. And there are thousands and thousands of tapes that used to be in his living room, but now they live in a storage facility in Long Island, Queens. And basically, I never personally went through the tapes. I filmed Steve Knutson, the head of Audica Records, going through the tapes, and while I was making the film, he was still searching for new mixes, new recordings, new songs that had been unreleased, and he would go through a whole process that oftentimes involved baking those tapes in an oven to make sure that the emulsion would stick to the cassette tape, and transferring that and remastering that material. So the work he was doing while I was making the film helped me get access to tracks that hadn't previously been heard. And in terms of choosing which tracks from Arthur's huge range of music, I kind of intuitively just chose tracks that I liked. And as I was finishing the film, I kind of had to think critically on what types of music weren't included in the film, and to kind of piece together something that felt representative of his overall body of work. But it was really an intuitive process that was facilitated by Steve Knutson, who was doing this kind of passion project of re-releasing all of Arthur's music. Yeah, I mean, I think the trap of a music documentary is to kind of fall into fan hagiography and just to be information and details that would only appeal to the kind of geek of all geeks. And I wanted to make a story that was kind of more human and that would be relatable and accessible to somebody who wasn't a pre-existing fan of Arthur Russell, because frankly, Arthur's music isn't well known by everybody. It has a cult following, but not a mass following. And yeah, I think I knew that the film had to be character-driven, and that the people involved in Arthur's life needed to bring him to life as a character, and that would deepen the experience of the music, which I knew would appeal to people because it's very special. In terms of other films that I saw as kind of guidelines for that, it's hard to remember now what I was watching, but there's a film I saw after making Wild Combination that really resonated with me, that is one of my favorite documentaries ever, and And definitely, if I had seen it, would have been a guideline on how to make a good music film, and that's A Skin Too Few, the short documentary about Nick Drake, which really brings to life his music and its relationship to British landscape, actually, in a beautiful and innovative way, and is short but very sweet. So if you liked this film, I think you might respond to that film too. Well, I perceive Arthur as being a kind of queer subject, kind of somebody who is part of gay history but isn't included in the kind of mainstream narrative of gay culture. And some people will come to this film as a music fan or as someone who's interested in avant-garde downtown New York culture or disco music, and they won't have that sense of shared interest. But I definitely came to this story wanting to make a kind of a different kind of gay love story. And in the past, I've made other kind of queer biographies. So the story of Arthur fits into a kind of larger narrative for me, and I've thought of some of the subjects I've made films about as gentle gays. And I thought of that term because Arthur, as well as someone like Joe Brainerd, artist and poet I recently made a film about, they have a kind of self-deprecating sense of humor and a kind of gentle demeanor, but also an intensity to the way that they make their work. And I really admire that and aspire to that in a way myself. And you know, I think a great example of a gentle gay kind of thing is a song that doesn't appear in the film but is one of my favorite songs by Arthur called Tell You Today. And it's kind of like a light dance song about getting a new pair of sneakers and just walking down the street. And I just find that source material to be really charming. Something that I like to do in my filmmaking is mix real archival footage with what I would call fake archival footage, or material that I shoot myself. And I don't do reenactments like a TV crime show. The recreations that I shoot are meant to look like actual archival footage that could have been shot during the period of the film. So for this film, I used an old VHS tape recorder, and I literally traced the footsteps of Arthur by having an actor wear his actual clothes and get on the Staten Island ferry, or to go to places that resembled places that Arthur would have been at different points in his life, and filmed in either Super 8 or VHS these moments. There was only 2 or 3 archival recordings of Arthur in his lifetime, and I needed to do this kind of creative filmmaking to bring him to life, but also to create a visual experience for the film that felt rich and deep and authentic. So it's something that I like to do in my filmmaking, and I think it gives a different kind of feeling to the film than if I just relied on true archival material. It's been a little while since I've released a new film because I'm very busy completing a new film that I've been working on for 4 years. It's called Teenage, and the film looks at the invention of teenagers in the prehistory of youth culture. It's based on a book by the British punk author John Savage, and the film is a big departure from Wild Combination just in the sheer scope and scale of the subject matter, but a lot of the same filmmaking techniques are at play. The difference is, instead of shooting in VHS and kind of 80s and 90s film formats, in Teenage my goal was to bring to life the stories of actual teenagers from history in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. So I decided to shoot on the format that they would have shot on, and the recreations I filmed look like home movies that teenagers could have made themselves from that period. So I found 16mm camera bodies and lenses from that period, and I'm doing experimental film printing techniques to make the footage I'm shooting look like the actual archival footage that I've found from the eras.